Hello, and welcome to the Accountability Coach podcast, where we discuss proven business success principles related to helping you make more money and work less so you can enjoy having your ideal business and your ideal life. This is Bachrach. Today we have a very special guest with us who I know you will find super interesting because she analyzes the neuroscience behind the mindset and behaviors of elite athletes to assist with the challenges faced by entrepreneurs and executives. Elizabeth Gould is a certified master neuroplastician and best-selling author. Acclaimed as a contrarian thought leader, Elizabeth's ability to uplift, empower, and inspire people at the highest level has been acknowledged by Randy Zuckerberg, who actually invited Elizabeth to be a founding member of her Leadership Institute. Elizabeth's newest book, Feeling Forwards, has been endorsed by Tony Robbins, who is a #1 New York Times bestselling author and life strategist. Elizabeth's super skill is aligning cutting-edge neuroscience to unlock a personalized and compelling inner justification, inspiring high achievers to refine their aim, align their inner justification, and harness consistent behaviors to uplift to the next level and actually stay there. Elizabeth has even been featured in hundreds of media appearances, including interviews on TV shows including Amazon Prime, Bloomberg, Apple TV, NBC, Fox, Sky News, and more. Welcome, Elizabeth. We really appreciate you joining us.
Oh, Anne, I'm really excited. I love your show, and I love that we're both doing our best to improve the world of entrepreneurship and business owners everywhere.
For sure. I think we're kindred souls. I have no doubt.
Absolutely.
Well, to help us really be on the same page, what is a certified master neuroplastician so we understand the wealth of knowledge that you possess to actually help us today?
Oh, I love that. I always challenge people because it's easier if I explain what it isn't. So many people have what I call a concrete brain. And that is, we're so well worn in terms of with there's little pathways in our brain. Think of it like a pathway to a watering hole that a group of animals in Africa might go down a certain path. It doesn't matter whether you're a cheetah or a lion or an elephant. That's the path to the watering hole, and that's where you go when you need some water. Well, our brains are a little like that, and we get so stuck in these paths we create, whether it's a path back to your past where something very challenging and unwanted happened, or it's a path to where you'll see your role in life and you can't get unstuck. What a certified master neuroplastician does, and I use it in my coaching, is we literally take your brain from being concrete and we make it plastic. So we can divert those paths, we can create new paths so you can envisage your future. I think the biggest challenge I have is with personal development is there is a deeply entrenched, almost unconscious view that your brain is a helpful tool. Your brain is not a helpful tool. Your brain wants you to stay safe. So if you sat on the couch and ate Twinkies yesterday all day and watched Netflix, your brain thinks that's great. You sat on the couch, you're still alive, you had a good day. What do you mean you want to go for a run or you want to start a business? You were fine on the couch. Let's keep you on the couch. It's your mind that takes you places where you want to go. So neuroplasticity really is about rearranging your brain so that your mind can have the life that it wants to enjoy.
Wow, that was really interesting. And I totally understand what you're saying, but I never thought of it that way before.
It takes a long time to create that new path. So if we go back to my favorite watering hole analogy, you think if you're dropped in the middle of the jungle with a rusty machete and you have to hack a new path to the watering hole, it's going to take a long time. And you're going to get tired of making that pathway. So in my high performance coaching, I have a lot of tools and strategies so that you keep going to make that new pathway. I mean, there's all sorts of different science about whether it's 60 days or 100 days or 30 days to create a new habit. But you literally have to build a new pathway in your brain. Which is why I think I had this fantastic statistic. By the 19th of January, 850 million people have given up on their New Year's resolutions. You have to you literally have to change your brain. And the great news is that you can change your brain anytime, at any age, no matter what is happening to you.
That's awesome. And I also have read so many differing opinions about how many days does it really take to create a new habit. It's like, is it 30? Is it 60? Is it 90? Is it 1? Is it, what is it? And what are your thoughts on that? I'm just curious since you brought it up.
It's really interesting. I think it depends on what kind of habit. I read once that for an Olympic swimmer to change the angle of their little finger in backstroke, it takes, 60, 90 days. It takes a very long time. And I can understand that because muscle memory is quite hard to override. With a completely new habit, I think the first mistake or the first strategy that holds someone back is your brain doesn't like a vacuum. So if you've been doing one thing over and over and over, you can't stop that thing. You have to replace it with something else. And you have to put as much effort into what you replace it with and find a meaning to that. Then you're far more likely for that habit to stick. So it's a bit like, back to the watering hole, it's a bit like sitting in the middle of the old track you used to walk down and saying, well, I'm just not going to go that way anymore. Well, you actually have to take action. You have to build a new path. You have to replace the habit with something else. And that's where you really look at what was your aim, and this is where when I use my success maximizer methodology, I go right back to really the beginning of the behavior, because I have so many entrepreneurs, high performers, athletes come to me and say, Elizabeth, my willpower's broken. I used to be able to get up at 4:00 in the morning and hit the gym or go for a run or whatever it is, or meditate or journal. I just can't drag myself out of bed anymore. I just can't get going. It's my willpower's broken. So I need you to fix that, which is fine. But then we go back to what really is behind all of that, because there are 3 parts to creating the success that you want. And the first part is to understand your aim. And I always talk in terms of aims, not goals, because there are a few people that can find their why and everything works out for them and they don't have domestic dramas along the way. There are very, very few people. And the difference between an aim and a goal, when you have an aim, I liken it to, you've got a direction. You're running through a meadow towards the horizon, and you might see something that's off to the left that looks really interesting. You think, oh, I'll run past that. When you have a goal, it's a bit like running through a dark tunnel with a light at the end. You really, really lock yourself in. And so often people, sometimes goal was to get to medical school. You absolutely hate it. But perhaps if you expanded that to an aim, for example, you want to help people with their health. Well, okay, you didn't make it into medical school. Your aim was to make people healthy. Your aim was maybe to uncover something new. Well, you can still achieve that. You don't have to be locked in. So I'm taking your question about habits and really stretching it out. But if you look at that habit, why did you start that behavior in the first place? And maybe it was a stress response to a situation. Perhaps it was a family background, like drinking can be so often. But what was your aim when you started that? And what is your aim when you're replacing that habit? What are you heading towards? Let's get out of the tunnel into the meadow and let's see what the options are to move forward.
Well, that's only number 1 of the 3 parts. Now, don't hold back. You got us started down this path, Elizabeth. So we have to get 2 and 3 as long as we're here.
Absolutely. Well, the next one, once you uncover your aim, what's your inner justification? And the example I use there is, if I said to you, and this interview was terrible, I'm going to need you to get up at 4:00 tomorrow morning, and that's the only time I have, and we're going to do the podcast together. And you're such a beautiful, contributing and diligent person. You may get up at 4:00 in the morning tomorrow morning because I've asked you to. And the level of energy at which you would get up at 4:00 in the morning, maybe, what would you say, in terms of looking forward to the event, maybe a 6, maybe lower?
Well, for me, I'm a morning person and there are very few people like me, so I'm up at 4 already, so I'm raring to go.
Oh, you're one of the outliers for this example, but I will persist because I think I can still make it relevant to you. And then maybe instead I said to you, Anne, I need you to get up at 4:00 tomorrow morning because I have decided to give you and your beautiful husband, Bill, an all expenses 7-day trip to the Caribbean, and you're going to have to get up at 4:00 to secure your first class seat.
Oh, I'm definitely up for that.
Yeah, exactly. So when I'm working with clients, it's like, it's all very well to say you want to make $1 million in your business, 10, 100 million, be a unicorn, whatever. But what's your inner justification? Because unless your inner justification is really, really solid, when you've been working 14 hours a day for however long and eating a tin of beans because it's always taking longer than you thought it would, as it does, to get going, you really have to have a strong inner justification. So getting back to getting up at 4:00, my willpower is broken. Well, let's go back to what's your aim for that behavior? What's your inner justification? And in my book, Feeling Forwards, I talk about using quantum physics to bring the future into the present. So, and this is something that athletes do. And I'm heading towards number 3, I promise. But what an athlete does is they eat, train and sleep and think like a champion before they've won a single race. And entrepreneurs do the reverse. So let's say you met a young person and you chatting away and you said, what are you going to do with your life? And they said, I'm going to be a professional athlete. And you say, excellent. What's your sport? And they said, well, I haven't really decided yet. I thought I might win a few races. Then I'll get a coach and start training and do all the other stuff. And you probably as well, I meet so many entrepreneurs who are flailing away at a project that isn't really working, and you walk them through their life and they say, no, when I've sold my first 1 million widgets, when I've got my 3rd round of funding, then I will get a personal trainer and I will work out. Then I will be on top of my finances. And it's just like the teenagers saying they would train really hard when they won a few races. So what I do through Feeling Forwards is I say, okay, you have your aim, you have your inner justification. This is the person you want to become. This is the life you want to have. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to behave like that person now. I was at a dinner in Santa Barbara, and I sat next to this beautiful entrepreneur, and he was asking about Feeling Forwards, and he's got an incredible coffee business. And I said, so what's your 5-year plan? And he articulated what his 5-year plan was, where he wanted to be in 5 years' time. I said, so how much could you do now? And he looked at me because that was locked into what he was going to be doing in 5 years. He said, well, I could actually do about 3 out of 10 things right now. I said, well, that's Feeling Forwards, because you start to behave and have the attributes of the person you want to be and the lifestyle you want to have in 5 years' time. So that's the third part of the Success Maximizer method. We look at all the behaviors and attributes of the person who has the life you want to enjoy, and we bring them back into the present. I love one of my pin-ups, and it's so lovely that Netflix, I think it's Netflix, have got a series out on him now, Cary Grant. So Cary Grant's real name was Archie Leach. He was an impoverished, born to a very poor family, alcoholic family, literally had nothing more than his looks, but he came to Hollywood and he reinvented himself. And as he says so beautifully, I pretended to be the man I wanted to become, or he became me. So before he had a single starring role, he dressed, spoke, acted, and was gloriously charming, just as the Cary Grant character was that everyone came to adore over the next following few decades.
That's brilliant. I mean, be who you want to be today. Why wait?
Exactly. And I love it when my entrepreneurs say to me, my clients say to me, oh, well, when this has happened, I'll be able to do that. And I say, do you honestly think that when you're more successful, that's in terms of a rich family life or a lot of money or a lot of investments, do you honestly think you're going to have more time in the day than you do now? Seriously? It takes a lot of time to look after those companies and those investments and have family time. If you don't have time to work out now, I can guarantee you are not going to be able to make time when you have all the success that you're aiming for.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about, at least I talk about in coaching, you don't have to take the whole year to earn it. So it's what you're talking about, feeling forward, right? So
yeah.
It's just really, why take the whole year to earn it if you don't really need to? Could you do what you need to do and get to where you want to go by the end of the year in 6 months?
Exactly. Why have you got these particular activities stuck on your 5-year plan? You're going to get to them in 5 years. Why do you have to wait 5 years? I love that saying. I'm going to borrow it, Anne.
My pleasure. Happy to help out. It's interesting too. I have one client in particular who really knocked the cover off the ball, so to speak. he set his goals, not his aim, but he did set his goals. And I believe in stretch goals. So as you probably know, the brain helps you more when you set a stretch goal than a realistic goal. So we won't go down that path, but I'm sure you
Yeah.
know that better than I do. And so he set all of his stretch goals. And of course, all of his friends told him, oh, you'll never achieve that. What are you thinking? Are you crazy? There's no way that's going to happen for you. And he just hunkered down, got really clear on what he wanted to do. And he actually exceeded every
Mm,
single one of his stretch goals, which surprised him, except for one, which he actually hit on the money.
that's brilliant. I mean, the interesting thing is about the brain. I mean, I've painted the brain as a bit of a monster, and it is. But the great thing is you can fool your brain. And once again, getting back to sport, if you and I write in Feeling Forwards a story about Phil Mickelson and other sports people. But if Phil Mickelson, for example, stayed in bed clutching a golf club, he was going through a particularly bad patch, and for 5 days before a tournament, he didn't actually play golf. He just held the club and visualized the play on every single hole in the 5 days leading up to the tournament. Now, when you do that, your brain doesn't actually know that you're not playing. So if I was, for example, I was joining you and Bill on your fabulous Caribbean vacation I've just given you. If I was joining you and I visualized the correct way, there is a wrong way I'll come to, but I visualized the correct way, seeing you and Bill by the pool and swimming across the pool to say hello, my brain doesn't know that I'm not actually swimming across the pool. So I love your stretch goal analogy, because once you tell your brain something, it's a bit like going to a library and asking for a book. Once you tell your brain something, it will accept it. So your brain starts to look for opportunities. There's a part of the brain called the reticular activating system, and it looks for everything that you've told it to look for. So if you're looking at buying at one stage, my husband was looking at buying a red Audi. So as soon as he decided he wanted a red Audi, I saw red Audis everywhere, because I'd switched on the part of my brain that was looking for red Audis, because I told it, I'm interested in red Audis. So your brain went, oh, okay. My brain said, oh, fantastic. I'm going to show you all the red Audis on the road. So what I love about your story with your client is once he told his brain about the stretch goals, and thank heavens he didn't, I'm sure you've spoken to him about the 5 closest people to you, either lead or detract from your success, but he was able to shut out the noise from his doubting friends and probably family. He turned his reticular activating system, or the RAS, it's easier. So he noticed all the opportunities that were there that would lead to his stretch goals. If he hadn't had those stretch goals, he would never have turned on that part of his brain, and he would have missed even a really, really obvious opportunity because his brain wasn't looking for it.
Absolutely. And I love your example. And I've read this, I don't know how many times or where it was, but your story really about the visualization of what you actually want, because I'm really going through the motions. I don't remember, was it Phil Mickelson you were talking about that was really visualizing himself on the golf course, visualizing exactly how he'd hit the ball, where it was going to land, how he would put it into the hole, et cetera, and doing all that. And you can probably tell a story about this much better than I can, but I read something about there were 2 groups of people. One group was just visualizing something that they wanted to do, and I don't remember if it was some sport. So we're going to do this, and I'm going to visualize everything. The other group's actually going to practice. They're going to train for it. So they're physically involved in training. The other group is not physically involved in training. And what happened to both of those groups of people?
Well, the ones that visualized it played better.
Exactly.
Mm.
That's exactly right. And isn't that interesting, though?
Oh, it's fascinating. And there's a lot of neuroscience in my book, Feeling Forwards. Lots of different, there's a wealth of information, but what I'd love to leave with your audience as one of the takeaways I hope they get from this episode is that so many people visualize incorrectly. And I go through this in Feeling Forwards, but when you visualize, so many people see themselves from outside. So you're like a fuzzy blob on a movie. And the exercise, one of them I take through in Feeling Forwards is, okay, let's imagine you've won a gold medal. So I want you to shut your eyes and visualize stepping up onto the podium and getting the gold medal. But now I want you to do it again, but I want you to visualize lifting your foot I want you to visualize how the podium feels underneath your foot. I want you to visualize the muscles you're going to use when you bend down and you feel the metal around your neck. So once you visualize bringing yourself completely into the picture, that's when you really get into the deep part of your brain, and your brain accepts, because your thoughts are the language of the brain, feelings are the language of the mind. Once you experience that metal ceremony, then it gets hardwired into your brain.
I just find this so fascinating because you're really immersed in all of this. So I know you find it really fascinating.
Oh, I know. I do. I could go on for a very long time.
I know that's kind of the cool part of being able to talk to somebody who's doing something really interesting that most of us really don't think about, know about, or pay attention to. And I think it's just really, really awesome that, to say, hey, the people that visualize it, who actually didn't train, actually did better than somebody who did the practicing, the physical practicing and trained. I mean, most people would say, how is that even possible?
Yeah, I love that. One of the experiments I talk about in the book is there were two groups. One had it didn't matter which arm it was, but their subdominant arm put in plaster. So they couldn't physically move their wrist, like it was a wrist to just below the elbow, in plaster, solid plaster. And the other group went to the gym and trained on that arm. But the group with the arm in plaster were asked to visualize moving the muscle. Now they can't move the muscle because it's in plaster. But when the plaster came off, their subdominant arm was stronger. The muscle had actually measurably increased compared with the other arm, just as much as the people who went to the gym.
Isn't this so fascinating how cool some of these things are and how we can apply it in our business? So let's switch gears just a little bit and talk about that. So what is it that high achievers consistently, they're already successful, high achieving people, what do they forget to do that they really need to do to stay or exceed where they're currently at?
Oh, I love this question. I talk about over in the methodology, I also talk about the 4 C's, and I've never met an entrepreneur yet who's got this question right. But I say, okay, what we're going to do, we're going to overlay all of our, we've got our triad, we've got our aim, our inner justification, our behaviors and attributes, and then we're going to overlay it with the 4 C's, which are consistency, clarity, certainty, and celebration. So what do you think is the most important? And I get a lot of consistency. I get a lot of clarity. I never get celebration. Because when you're building a business, or when you're training, I had the beautiful Kerry Walsh Jennings on my podcast a little while ago, and she says you've got to love the process. You've got to celebrate every training, even when it sucks, even when you don't enjoy it. You have to find beauty in that moment. And there are so many athletes that, Michael Phelps has spoken of it so eloquently, but one swimmer talked about sliding into depression as she stood on the podium waiting for her gold medal, because she hadn't let herself, my extrapolation, not hers, but she hadn't celebrated the journey. She hadn't learned to love the process. I mean, you and I know you've had some spectacular success in your life as well. That moment of success is pretty much a moment, whether it's getting an award or it's, your book takes the world by storm or whatever it is. That moment passes. And unless you've learned to celebrate the journey, to love the process, to find some meaning in what you're doing, success can feel very, very hollow.
Yeah, it really can. I could totally see that. So the celebration is the key we're looking for.
Absolutely. And it's like, I remember a client rang me and they'd been going through a very challenging time, and they'd had a very tough conversation with someone they'd been putting off for ages. And I said, okay, so what are you going to do to celebrate that you've had this conversation? And she said, oh, well, what could I do? I said, well, you could sit down and have a cup of tea. It doesn't have to be big. You can just sit down and acknowledge, actually, that was really tough, and I did it, and I've done it, and I'm proud of myself. I said, I know you've got 26 hours work to do every day, but just stop for 10 minutes and have a cup of tea and reflect on that moment.
Oh, that's so true. It's so true. I think some people think that, hey, a celebration is something big and it has to be extravagant, or, involve a lot of people, and it just doesn't. We can really enjoy a lot more of our life by just doing some simple things that are our own way of celebrating.
Yeah, and celebrate the moment. My husband and I are very different. If something happens, he'll say, "Oh, let's go out on the weekend." I'm like, no. This is really great. It's just happened. This is the moment. We're going out tonight, or we're doing something now. Otherwise, I think it's so easy. We're all so busy and getting busier. It's so easy to put something off and not just dwell in that one moment of that, whether it's a great sales call or whether you hit your target a week early before the end of the month. That's the moment. Grab that moment and enjoy it. Don't put it off as something that you can schedule. Celebration should be constant.
I totally agree. There was a gentleman, I was talking to a client the other day, and I said, "Hey, I understand there's something to celebrate." And he said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "You got a client and you generated this amount of revenue. Let's do what I call the money dance."
I love it.
And he said, "Well, isn't that like for when I'm 20?" And now I did that sort of thing. And I said, "No, it doesn't matter how old you are. You can do the money dance because you're celebrating the fact that somebody made a great decision to work with you and you're going to be helping them. And you can do that at any time and feel good. Why not now?"
Oh, I love that. See, you were a neuroplastician in that moment because by doing the dance and getting his endorphins going, his brain then associated getting a new client. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. This feels good. Okay, this person wants more new clients, and you turn on your Raz and away you go. I love that.
Yeah, he actually started laughing and smiling because I was like, "Come on, let's see you do some money dance movement or something. I want to see that."
Oh, that'd be an interesting short on YouTube, your client's money dancing.
Yeah, it was quite entertaining, I do have to say. Okay,
Mm.
so how can we create our own success formula? So, and I know this is kind of a big word coming up, so we never get stuck or sidetracked again.
Great question. I think there's always time to reflect if you're feeling exhausted, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling stuck, just to take stock on, are you really where you wanted to be, or are you where you thought you should be? Which is a very different question. I think we get, particularly in some families, there's a strong expectation of what you're going to do with your life. And in other times, there's an expectation of how your life should turn out. I lost my corporate career when I had cancer, and it was a corporate career I loved. I'd built over 20 years, and I'm fine now. But at the time, I was very unwell, and that couldn't continue, and I had to pivot. And I think not only my survival, but how I've built this beautiful life for me now was not going down the path of, well, this shouldn't be happening. And in my first book, Secrets of Cancer Survivors, I talk about the thinking pattern of, and this is a long time ago now, but I talk about the thinking pattern of people who survive cancer. So how do they, in effect, command their brain so that they don't go down the paths of this shouldn't have happened, this shouldn't be happening to me, why am I here, it's my parents' fault, they said I should do this when I wanted to do that. I think firstly it's taking stock and really taking ownership of, okay, you can actually be wherever you want to be, no matter the circumstances. I've been through some tough things. Everyone's been through some tough things. I remember Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning talking about in the prison camp, people fell in love. I cannot imagine a more overtly hopeless place than a Nazi concentration camp to fall in love, but they did. So I think it all starts with getting really clear with yourself on this is your life. You can create your own path to the watering hole. What is it really that you want to do? And then look at creating your aim. What's your inner justification that's going to keep you going at 3 o'clock in the morning when, it wasn't 3 o'clock in the morning, it was a bit earlier, but, some piece of software wasn't working and I was late in delivering something, and, you're the only person that really cares about it. Being an entrepreneur or owning a business can be very lonely because the buck stops with you, but what's really going to keep you going and keep you motivated no matter what? And I think the first step towards that is having a really honest reflection and look at where your behavior has and hasn't taken you, and getting really clear on what you're prepared to invest in yourself.
So when you talk about reflection, would it be how often would we do it? How long would it take to do that? how can we create a routine that's going to help us from getting stuck or sidetracked by using reflection?
Well, I ask myself 5 future-focused questions every morning, and they're all in the book, so I won't say all of them because I'd love the readers to buy my book, your listeners. But the first is, what will I do today? I will be grateful I've done 1 month and 1 year from now. And then another question is, what will I look back on and be proud that I achieved on this day today? So it's very easy to get out of bed. We pretty much have the same morning routine from the moment we get up out of bed to the food we eat, what we listen to, what we turn on, what we turn off, the first things we do. It's really easy to get, and quite often, particularly if you drive to work, most people would say there are moments of the trip they can't even remember making. So the first thing to do is like, okay, what I love about the future focused, and this is all about feeling forwards, but if you take your mind to the future at the start of your day, that's when you can lift yourself up out of where you're stuck right now.
Absolutely. It's so powerful. And I've talked to billionaires and all kinds of people that really start their mornings, I think, way differently than the majority of the population. And you mentioned 2 very impactful, powerful questions. And I can't wait to get into your book to read the other 3. But I just think that those are so powerful, and I think it helps us start the day, every day, the right way, as opposed to the wrong way. Because
Absolutely.
How many people, get up in the morning, they turn their phone on, they have all, got to check email, got to check this, got to check that. They don't even think about, what am I going to do today that I'm going to, be grateful for? I'm going to be happy about. What can I do today that's going to just help me feel good, have joy in my life, whatever it might be. And I think so many times the majority of the people don't even think that way at all or know to think that way.
Yes, because they're focused on tomorrow. But as I say, today is the past of your future. So whatever you do today creates the future. And by asking and really creates tomorrow. So by asking the future focused questions in the morning, literally what you're doing as soon as you get out of bed, you don't have to write them down. You can just think about it at the traffic lights or whatever works for you. But you're really turning on that RAS, that part of your brain, because once you focus on the future from the moment you wake up, you see opportunities that you would never have seen. If instead the question you asked yourself was, oh God, how am I going to make it through today? I've got this meeting, I've got that meeting, this isn't working, so-and-so's not speaking with me. Instead you say, what can I do today that in the future I will look back on that will have changed my life?
I frankly get goosebumps when you say that, because I just think this question or these 2 questions that you just shared with us are so, so powerful and impactful. And I hope people will go back and listen to those questions, write them down, and really apply them in their life every single morning, every single day, and include, of course, your other 3 questions with those that we'll get from reading your book. But I just think that is just so, so powerful. Boy, I could go on and on and on, Elizabeth, and we could spend hours doing this. I'm enjoying it so much. I'm really getting a lot out of this. So we don't have all day and we can't keep going. So is there anything else that you would like to share that would have even more impact on what you've already shared with us that's important for us to take away?
Oh goodness. I think it's my belief, which I prove scientifically in Feeling Forwards. When I wrote the book, I wrote it and then COVID started, and I really reassessed it because I have never written a book, and I've written 3 books now. I've never written a book about wishing and hoping and sitting back and it'll all come to you, because frankly it doesn't work. So everything in Feeling Forwards, all the tools are all based on scientifically based experiments. It's not popular ideas. If it wasn't in a reputable scientific journal, it didn't make it into the book. So you can really rely on the science in the book, because you actually can create your future. And if you look at all the incredibly successful people that are very visibly successful in the world, they have all used a version of Feeling Forwards. They really have. So to learn more about my work, I'm probably most active on LinkedIn and Instagram, so you can find me there. There'll be articles on LinkedIn. There's my podcast, the Feeling Forwards podcast. My website is elizabethgould.com. But if you'd like to, anyone listening who's feeling a little bit stuck, who's wondering how on earth they start the process of the A and the inner justification and the behaviours and attributes, that process is in the Feeling Forwards book. But if the first 5 people or 5 of your beautiful listeners, just say you're a listener to Anne's fabulous podcast, if you'd like to send me an email to elizabeth@elizabethgould.com, the first 5 emails I'll get back to you, and we'll organise just a 30-minute chat to see if I can help you get unstuck and on your way to the future you want to enjoy.
I don't think it's see if you can help them. I think it's that you will help them, Elizabeth.
That's a much better future-focused phrase, Anne. Thank you.
I don't think there's no question in my mind that that's going to happen for these people that contact you. Well, thanks again. I really appreciate you sharing your super valuable time, and I've got some great notes, and I'm looking forward to personally reading your book as well.
Oh, thank you, Anne, and thank you for taking the time to draft such insightful questions. Always, I love what I do, but it makes it very easy to hopefully give your listeners as many takeaways as I could in the time.
Yes, I'm sure they got a lot, and I'm excited for them to really apply the simple concepts that you shared today. And I know there's so much more in your book that they can learn from.
Thank you so much, Anne. Thanks for having me on the show.
My total pleasure. Well, after investing your very valuable time with Elizabeth and me, I sure hope that you gain some insights and ideas that will propel you to greater heights in every facet of your life. Share the wisdom by passing on my Accountability Coach podcast to help ignite others, which can be found on most podcast platforms and in most English-speaking countries. And subscribe to the Accountability Minute for daily guidance on proven business success principles, which also can be found on most podcast platforms and in most English-speaking countries. And I salute you for your hunger for more, your drive for wanting to be even better, and your unyielding commitment to becoming the architect of your destiny. Want more proven business success tips and resources? Well, of course you do. Subscribe to my blog by going to accountabilitycoach.com/blog, and always aim for what you want each and every single day. Until next time, make it a great day, today and every day. I appreciate you listening.